Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Do It Again. We're not late. We're exactly when we mean to be. We announced last episode that Captain Logan was going to be on this episode, and we're 4 weeks late because we kept not being able to
just link up our schedules.
Yeah. So last week we were supposed to do it, and Cap was like, "Oh, this thing happened." I was like, "Okay, well, if it's another week goes by and he can't do it, we're just going to record." So we're just recording without him because he is at a convention today. I'm Eric.
I'm Matt.
So
it really sucks that we both work at the same place, because if one of us is off, chances are the other guy's working.
Yeah, except for Saturdays. So it's kind of a bummer because the pitch was kind of... I did it for Cap because he likes Ghostbusters. This pitch was a lot harder than I thought it would be. Ghostbusters doesn't pitch funny.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't sit there writing jokes out, because so you kind of have to come up with
I have one thing that's not even a joke, but it's something I think is funny.
Yeah.
Really early on. And I kind of do the Force Awakens thing.
Yeah.
Right, kind of structurally a little bit call back to the first one while hopefully being different enough that it's not just the first one. Because I thought a lot about okay, well, there's always something giant at the end.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things that make it a Ghostbusters movie.
Mm-hmm.
So since it's my prompt, I'll go first.
I'm a little bummed I don't get to hear Caps at all.
Maybe we can get him to record
maybe
his own.
record it or post it,
like an addendum.
Yeah, something like that. That'd be neat.
An appendix. Let's Do It Again. Ghostbusters.
Really
appendix.
Curious about what his prompt was going to be, though.
Well, and I think you and I, because I opened this up to basically you could do anything.
Yeah.
I think you and I did the same thing, and I know he did something different. Based on just a slight conversation, he said something, and I was like, oh, I think I know what you're doing, and that's different than what I'm doing. I think because I know we both didn't do this, I think he did Ghostbusters 3. I think he did, it's 1992, this is Ghostbusters 3, which neither of us did. Alright, so my film has a bunch of stuff around it.
Yeah.
It's called Ghostbusters X. Oh. Now, those keen intellects will know that X also is Roman numeral 10.
Scholars of the ancient Latin.
It's a very subtle reference, but so the premise of it is that this is...
And in no way has been done before by a popular fighting game franchise.
But that it kind of... This movie exists and kind of pretends that we just kept making Ghostbusters movies and this is the 10th one. And what I think would be cool if this, was a real movie, is in the lead-up, you would do the missing 7 movies. So, you would do, a comic book that would be, 3. You would do a video game that's 4. You would do...
a novelization that's 5.
Yeah. I was thinking, you could do, a trilogy of novels.
Game
I didn't go mobile game. I went, direct-to-video animated film.
A mobile game would be fun. A board game, that's 6.
But I think it would be cool to, as, I feel like we've kind of lost the
tie-in?
The tie-in lead-up.
The crazy tie-in
lead-up. Nothing leading up to The Force Awakens led up to The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
But that's with everything. It's not just The Force Awakens. Everything kind of... I love the idea that, there is... Was it 30? Is it 30 missing years?
Yeah.
89 to... 99 to... Almost 30.
Yeah, it's a lot.
25... There would be 25 missing years and you would get to fill it in and... you could have fun with the
just a toy line that just advertises as Ghostbusters 8. And you're who are these people? I don't know what this is.
And they whatever film supposedly came out in 1998 had to, it's just them being these cell phones don't work, we don't get reception. But yeah, so that's the idea going into this, is that the Ghostbusters have kind of continued on for all of this time, and there's all these kind of missing stories. So we open with a giant, massive, what you would think would be like the end of a Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
There's a big monster. There's beams shooting everywhere, but they don't look like proton beams.
Yeah.
They look different. But there's like these beams, and so then you kind of pull back and you see the Ghostbusters aren't fighting this monster. There's a dude who's named Victor Savage, he's just Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Like he's got like a cape, and he's got.
So he's just a sorcerer.
Yeah, he's a sorcerer.
Cool.
He's got like a cool medallion. I didn't cast him, so I'm just gonna say it's Peter Dinklage. I left. I told you there's a major character, and I left an opening where I left brackets to fill in, and I forgot to fill it in. So I'm just gonna say Peter Dinklage is a sorcerer fighting
tiny sorcerer,
some kind of giant monsters, and he beats them, and then it's credits Ghostbusters. So I just kind of have like an info dump of like things here, like not actual like scenes, but basically what you find out is they've figured out evil is a traceable graph.
Yeah.
So, like in the first movie, the paranormal stuff like starts getting more and more as we build to Gozer. So, the second thing happens again.
They even refer to the skyscraper as like a focusing, like a lightning rod of evil.
And the second one kind of does the same thing. So my idea was it becomes a followable pattern.
Yeah.
That they can graph out. And all the peaks are the Ghostbuster movies that we've had previously.
Yeah.
So maybe like you might have like
just run around dealing with pesky stuff, preparing for the next spike.
Well, so like maybe you might like have a graph where it's like Ghostbusters, meet the monsters, and like Ghostbusters, whatever Ghostbusters, 4 was, and all that. One of the lead up films has to be Ghostbusters Meet the Monsters. I thought about doing that, and I was like, that's a great idea, but not for the movie.
Yeah.
The way that the Ghostbusters have kind of operated, they've expanded their operation outside of New York. This whole movie takes place in Seattle. Okay. I just wanted to move it out of New York.
Yeah.
Like I was like, all right, we've done New York, let's go somewhere else. I like the idea that it's always raining. Like I think that would be a different visual. But that the way the Ghostbusters work is they start hiring people on as they know there's going to be like a ramp up.
Yeah.
And then they, what's the word? And then they downsize.
Yeah.
For the slog parts, and we're in a slog part. There's not supposed to be any kind of ramp up for like another year or two. So there's only 2 people working, like 2 active Ghostbusters, at least in this kind of precinct. We find out that Ray and Egon are both dead.
Oh.
They died in Ghostbusters 9, which was 2012. But it had nothing to do with the Mayan prophecy. It was a completely other giant supernatural event that was going to end the world.
Coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. It just happened to all. And so they passed away. Egon, you would have to deal with, but I got rid of Ray too because, well, I have reasons. Winston's the head of this thing just because I have Venkman in very briefly, and I didn't want to ditch Winston. Yeah, so Winston's the head of this, but kind of at the opening, he leaves for business reasons. He's called to another something. For some reason, he's not there for the majority of the film. Okay, so we're introduced to Ray's daughter, who's Rebecca, who's Linda Cardellini.
Okay, cool.
Who I already used in my Star Wars pitch, but I really like Linda Cardellini. She's not a Ghostbuster. Yeah. She's just kind of filling in to help out with like bookkeeping and like records keeping. And she doesn't not believe in ghosts because that would be dumb at this point.
Yeah.
But she kind of doesn't care. Like she's kind of annoyed that like her dad was obsessed with this stuff, and it's very much that kind of character. Then the two working Ghostbusters is James Tart. I couldn't come up with all the Ghostbusters have really cool last names. I couldn't come up with like a punchy last name, so he's James Tart, who's Chris Pratt,
of course.
And the implication with his character is that this is kind of the only job he can get.
Yeah.
He's not here because he wants to be here.
Mm-hmm.
It's because, like, he washed out of, like, the police academy.
Yeah.
He tried to be a firefighter. That didn't work.
Not
he worked at
enough to
McDonald's.
Be a plumber, you know?
In another universe, I guess he could also be, what's his name? Who's Ant-Man? Paul Rudd. He could also be Paul Rudd, I guess, but I cast him as Chris Pratt.
Paul Rudd's a great one.
And then there's, you're changing your...
No. Reviewing my actual list.
And then there's Vince Ludd. Again, trying to come up with some kind of... It's not very... One of the things I don't like about some of these pitches is when I actually have to come up with names.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, these don't mean anything. So I have Vince Ludd. He's Donald Glover.
Mm.
And he's just like a huge Ghostbusters fanboy.
Yeah.
He's the one that's obsessed with the minutia and the mythology, and maybe have some meta jokes about how, like, well, your second adventure was kind of exactly the same as your first adventure, but your third adventure was very different. Like, you know, maybe he'd be used for maybe like lampshading things and like, you know, that kind of stuff. But so he's kind of the big like geeky. Yeah. He's the audience.
Yeah.
All right.
He's the fanboy bone throw.
Yeah. So we kind of meet all them, and then we cut to like a college, and there's a scientist named Frederick Humstein, who's T.J. Miller.
Cool. Yeah.
I think specifically in Silicon Valley, T.J. Miller brings kind of a Venkman-y vibe. So if none of the characters are kind of the Ghostbusters, like, if there is a Venkman, it's T.J. Miller.
Yeah.
And he just kind of has, like, this vision of him being sacrificed in, like, a demonic cult.
Oh, God.
Then there's, like, a huge, like, ghost carnival that just shows up on campus.
Cool.
And there's just, like, an invasion of, like, ghosts everywhere. The Ghostbusters get the call to come deal with this, and they're worried. They're like, there's only two of us, and there's supposed to be like a bunch of ghosts. Like, it's a ghost carnival.
Yeah.
And so they convinced Rebecca to come along with them as a Ghostbuster. They go, and because of... I gotta find my thing. All right. They go, and we're kind of gonna say that, like, the technology has not updated since Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah.
That because of their build-up, come-down timeline, they never actually have, like, a good amount of funding to ever, like, upgrade their tech. And because of that, like, it doesn't work as well. And so they're trying to bust the carnival ghosts, and then Victor Savage shows up and just kind of, like, exercises all of them. Yeah. And you know, does, like, a big, like, press conference thing, and
it's even funnier if you picture a full-sized Doctor Strange cape on Peter Dinklage, because the collar is just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and he's floating so that the cape goes all the way down. So the Ghostbusters kind of, like, go home defeated and sad, and but T.J. Miller's kind of Frederick kind of notices them, and it's kind of the scene from Ghostbusters 1 where they're all eating the Chinese food, and they're like, we don't have any paying customers, and, you know, chew your food. This is the last of the petty cash. It's kind of that scene where they're just like, oh,
yeah,
or maybe that's not. I think I might have that scene later. I'm confusing it. Anyways, so they go home defeated, and then Frederick comes to them and is like, I had this vision that I'm gonna, like, and they're like, well, it's probably a dream. And he's like, no. I was walking.
Yeah.
Like, I totally had this vision. And then, like, Frederick kind of notices, like, you know, you didn't do as good as you could have today. Like, that tech is, like, 30 years old. Like, maybe you should think about, you know, doing this and this and this. Because just like the original Ghostbusters, he works at the college, and therefore
is a genius.
Yeah, he's both he has psychology, parapsychology,
Yeah, of course.
engineering.
Intimate knowledge of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, and nuclear accelerators. So James, who's Chris Pratt, goes with Frederick to go to the campus to kind of look around and see if there's anything that they can find. And then Rebecca and Vince stay home and or stay at the facility and just kind of do research. While they're doing research, they kind of have a conversation about Ray.
Yeah.
Where, like, she's kind of like, well, he was my dad, and, like, he was never there, and and he was super fascinated with ghosts, and always cared about ghosts, and, like...
Always trying to recreate this one night with one particular one.
Yeah.
My mom was a ghost!
Maybe? No.
Maybe?
No. There's no penetration in that. Well, I mean... Anyways.
Scene. He has a pirate costume.
Well, and they loved it so much, because it's actually a different scene that they just used that bit of as a dream. They really wanted that in the movie. Anyways, so like they have this whole conversation about where Vince is talking about how much he like how essentially what everyone says about Ray, like outside of the movie universe, he's the heart. He's the guy that had the enthusiasm. He's the whole reason this exists. That kind of a thing. Okay. And then, sorry, I actually have notes, so I'm not just kind of like doing it off my head, so I have to actually find where I was.
Let them start being like, hacha?
So while they're having this conversation, they get a call to go, they get a call to go catch a ghost. So they both suit up, and you can kind of tell, like, by this point, Rebecca has become a Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
Like, she's just kind of thinking that way. Like, when they came back, she was, like, right along with them, like, oh, that guy sucks. Like, he took our...
Yeah.
So they kind of go to catch a ghost, and it's one of the ghosts that was at the carnival.
Oh.
One of the ones that was seemingly exorcised, that's who they go catch. Frederick and James don't find anything. And so they, it's Ghostbusters 1. Yeah. It's going to the apartment. Well, this is weird eggs, but like, there's nothing specifically there. But Frederick is like, well, I'll upgrade like your technology. Like, I'll make it all better if you let me be a Ghostbuster.
Oh.
So now I've got 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of have a montage, an inversion montage of the first movie. Where the first movie we have the montage where they're going around, it's the boys in gray, busting ghosts. Here it's them, it kind of serves two purposes. One is we see like cool new tech that they've got, and like maybe like the proton beams are green now. Just
look a little different.
Yeah, just things. But it's a montage of basically them getting beaten to the chase by...
Every time.
Yeah, by Victor Savage, and he does his magic and dispels it. And then, like, they go home and they talk about having to quit. Like, like we're not making money off this. Like, we're getting the calls.
Yeah.
But he shows up and does it for free, and then nobody's paying us, and we might have to shut down. So they discover that the cult that Frederick saw in his vision is the first known cult in all of history, and is largely regarded to be the first cult in all of history. And that along with the cult, they worship. They believe that there's going to be this great destroyer.
Yeah, of course.
And his like the destroyer of the universe.
Oh.
And his birthplace is Earth. And I didn't come up with a name for him, like, because big monster names are just consonants and syllables. Blazathoth, something.
Defoggle?
Yeah. Goes or two. It's a big. There's a big monster that's going to destroy the entire universe.
Tron Legacy is going to bring the end to the universe.
Yeah. This cult believes that Earth is its birthplace, and that Frederick is. They basically decide on a bloodline to be the sacrifice for this thing, and so they just kind of kept this bloodline going throughout history till it got to T.J. Miller.
Now he's gonna be sacrificed.
Yeah, so his entire reason for existence is to be sacrificed to summon this ancient, Lovecraftian monster that's going to destroy the entire universe. And that the symbol of the cult is also the symbol that's on Victor Savage's necklace. Yeah, layers. Pay attention.
Ogres up in this plot.
So they go to Victor because at this point he's very famous and everyone kind of knows where he lives, and he has maybe like Peter Vincent in the Fright Night remake, where he just has this kind of really big loft, and he's kind of made a name for himself now. And they go to him and they're like, you know what? We know that this necklace is something. And so there's this guy emerges. His name is Largo. He kind of looks like Dracula.
Yeah.
I picture him as Morlun from Spider-Man, from J.M.S. Spider-Man. He just kind of dresses old-fashioned. He's got slick black hair, and he's Carl Urban.
Ooh.
He's the head of the cult. And we find out that basically Victor has a disease. I didn't say cancer because cancer seems obvious. He has some kind of life-ending disease. And he made an agreement with spirits that whenever they get too big and get noticed and the Ghostbusters are going to get called, he comes in and pretends to get rid of them.
He Dragonhearts them.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. He Dragonhearts them.
Love it.
And they and they go somewhere else. At least that's what he thinks he's doing. Really, it's all kind of parts of this big end of the world kind of a thing. And Largo basically reveals that the Ghostbusters mistranslated. Earth is not the birthplace of this thing.
Is it like the egg?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. There's a big monster living in the Earth, and the Earth is in fact the egg of this monster.
Oh my god.
And so I just have explains big plan.
Yeah.
Somehow, this is a rough pitch. Somehow, all the ghosts that we've seen throughout the movie, they're all kind of doing something, and it all kind of connects. The montage, maybe something in, you'd put stuff in each of the scenes of the montage that build to some kind of big thing. He just kind of snaps his fingers, and Victor Savage gets his disease back, but it also speeds up to where it would have been.
So he just shrivels up
he just kind of dies, and then Largo steals Frederick, who's T.J. Miller.
Poor T.J. Miller.
And then mass hysteria. All of the ghosts that we've seen the entire film, they all just come out. They're running around the town, and Largo takes Frederick to the top of the Seattle Tower because I got to use icons.
Of course.
And they start this ritual where they're going to sacrifice him and they're going to unleash this monster, Baphomet.
Baphomet.
And so, and then originally I was just going to go Lovecraft and be there's giant tentacles that start coming out of the ground that are from the creature, but then I was well, Ghostbusters is kind of silly sometimes. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man isn't a big monster.
Yeah.
Or, so I was okay, I've decided that it is one of its names is the crab with a billion claws. And so it's just
claws?
Giant crab claws coming up out of the ground. Because I think that's funny. There's so much, the mass hysteria is so large that Winston books a flight, comes back, and is what's going on, guys? They points at the graph and is we're at the downtime. What's going on? There isn't supposed to be an Earth-ending threat for another year and a half.
I'm supposed to be
So they all suit up with a Batman Robin-esque, butt shot, arms picking up gadgets, and then they
ripples on the jackets.
Yeah, exactly. Except for the girl,
of course.
And they have to
don't want to be sexist.
Ghost catch their way to the
Yeah.
Seattle Tower. There's just tons of ghosts, and they just have to working their way to the Seattle Tower. And then I literally just have 2 lines because it's an ending.
Yeah.
Basically, they get to the end. They free Frederick. They stop the cultists, and because I wanted something that wasn't crossing the streams, and also how do you stop the giant thing that's growing in the earth? Somehow, some way, they used the Seattle Tower, the Space Needle. I can't remember if it's actually the Space Needle. Because there's another one that looks like it that's right across the street in Canada.
Yeah.
I can never remember which one's the Space Needle. Anyways, they use that as basically a giant superconductor for their proton streams, and just it goes into the Earth, just a huge proton beam.
Zap it until it stops.
Yeah, exactly. They win. There's a big come together with Becca and her dad. She realizes why this is important. Maybe he was a little bit too interested in this stuff. Maybe he did spend a little bit too much time away from her. But this is important. She's a Ghostbuster. They're all Ghostbusters. And then it ends with an interview on TV where we see Venkman. Mm-hmm. And we find out what Venkman's been doing, at least since, Ghostbusters 7 or something. He has become, for some reason, the PR agent of the Ghostbusters. And he's on TV, and he's essentially kind of pitching and saying that, because of the build-up and come-down and all of this, the Ghostbusters have trouble getting funding and doing things, so they're in talks to become just civil servants. They're going to become part of the government system, because that's the original pitch of Ghostbusters, is that they're just garbage men, and I feel like Ghostbusters should always be moving towards that.
Yeah.
It's why I don't like the idea of reboots. They're no, we're moving towards the garbage men thing.
Yeah.
So the idea is that this is the beginning.
Average Joes need to be able to do this job.
Yeah, and so this is the beginning of that. Is Venkman, being snarky and sarcastic, being well, if the government would pay us,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my pitch. It's pretty rough.
No, it's good. I like it.
All right. What is yours?
Okay, mine is also a hypothetical, way later continuation, as is yours. I have sort of a bit of a background primer, just kind of I would start mine in that way that I have a weird love-hate relationship with, where it's newsreel footage as a prologue. Yeah. Where you'd find out that they save the world again with the what's his name? Why am I forgetting his name? Viggo Mortensen. They stop Viggo. And
I'm not a Carpathian.
I'm not a Carpathian. I imply there was a third thing that they saved the world from, and Winston retired shortly after that.
Well, it could have been the video game. I never played the video game, so it's not included in my canon, but I know a lot of people consider that canon, official canon with the first 2 movies.
So I kind of have him retiring after another world-ending scenario where he's I think I'm just going to cut and run, later. I take the Max Landis. Egon vanished to another dimension because it's too funny. I love it.
He accidentally ascended to another plane.
I don't say he's dead. In fact, the Ghostbusters know where he is. He's just way more interested in what's going on out in the ether than back on Earth. Essentially, Ray and Venkman were left to run the Ghostbusters as a business, and it got big. It got big for a little while after they saved everything, and then it started spawning rip-offs and competitors and stuff. So Venkman, kind of funny, goes to Seattle to open up a East Coast kind of franchise, or West Coast franchise. And it's here that, everything starts kind of falling apart. They're not doing as good. There isn't a world-ending threat. They're not really identified as worth enough to be civil servants yet. And eventually Venkman just goes, sorry, we're going to cut and run. So he sells off his shares of the stock, selling a lot of his stuff to other competitors. And Ray is kind of just left to run the business, which goes for another 10, 15 years, kind of steadily closing every store he has or shop he has until it's just one location. It's not the firehouse, but it's in New York, run by his nephew.
It'll be funny. So the firehouse would burn down.
It burned down. I do have a note that the Statue of Liberty is still where they leave it. It's still in front of that hotel or that museum. Because how are they gonna get it back? So essentially, my whole first act is kind of just introducing. It starts with an action sequence where ghosts are causing panic everywhere. They're calling people. They call who you think are the Ghostbusters, and there's proton packs going off, and they look different. It's a little weird. The technology looks different. It's a little sleeker, a little bluer, a little grayer, very modern, very different.
Like the Ghostbusters reboot.
Except,
the Ghostbusters reboot version
except when you finally see who
or
got the ghosts.
RoboCop, not Ghostbusters. The RoboCop reboot version of the Ghostbusters.
Except when you finally get to see who the Busters are, they are not wearing Ghostbusters logo shirts. This is a different rival group composed of Will Ferrell, Patton Oswalt, Bill Hader, and Zach Galifianakis. And they introduced themselves.
Bill Hader's great. He should have been in Ghostbusters.
And my Will Ferrell is
should have been my Ghostbusters.
Will Ferrell's kind of their manager in the rival group, and he's almost more like the reality show. Like he acts like he's being recorded for a sci-fi original series all the time. Patton Oswalt, this would be established later, but he's kind of like a Ghostbusters fanboy, but was fired for being kind of a screw up. So he's just oddly antagonistic of the Ghostbusters all the time. Bill Hader is a convicted ex-con. This is the only job he could get. So he's just kind of tattooed and angry. And Zach Galifianakis is the occult master. He's kind of styled like a very occult warlock kind of figure. Nothing he says matters. He is making up constant nonsense. But essentially they bust the ghosts, and it would pan over to our crew of Ghostbusters having just showed up. Driving on a flat tire. None of them are even really half dressed yet.
It's weird that both of our pitches have someone else doing the Ghostbusters job for them.
So the Ghostbusters are bummed out again that they got beat by these guys of all people. And they go home. And they go back, and my Ghostbusters team is the manager runner. The Ray of my movie is Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt, of course.
Yeah.
Who I don't want to be fit at all. I want him to put on a gut. I want him to go.
I want him to go Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I want him to go back to Parks and Rec. I want to be a sad, what am I doing? He doesn't even really get in the field ever.
Maybe make it look like his hair is
he's thinning a bit.
Yeah,
he's
just got a bald spot.
We get Michael B. Jordan, who is the part timer. He's has this job on the side while he works on his law degree. He doesn't really care about any of this. He's doing bigger, better things than he thinks they are. So even when he's here, not interested.
He's learned to put ghosts away.
Yeah.
By the system.
We get James Franco, who is maintenance and engineering. He's definitely the Egon. I kind of portray him as he's a genius and he shouldn't be here. He's a guy who should be working on hadron colliders, but he's fixing air conditionings. He's just this weird out there guy.
So good.
He's so good. And we get Tina Fey, who is the true believer. She was a little kid when Vigo was getting put away. She wanted to be a Ghostbuster, and now it's kind of the you never meet your heroes concept, where it's this is it. It's not as it's not glorious at all. In fact, I haven't saved. I want to see where she's I haven't saved the world once since I got this job. I did this to be good things.
Well, to be fair, we never saved the world. We just saved New York.
And it's she should be the manager. She's the one who wants to do this. And then Aubrey Plaza, who's the odd choice, but she's kind of she's not much of a skeptic. But she's the she doesn't care. She's equally kind of I don't really ghosts, whatever. It's kind of lame. I don't care. So she's kind of the secretary.
Well, that's all. That's Aubrey Plaza as a person.
Yeah. So she's kind of the secretary, but only because she's I don't really want to go.
She's the secretary in Parks and Rec too.
I almost wanted to be Parks and Rec. So
I almost did the community cast.
Really good one.
I almost just did the community cast, and then I was no, I'll just keep Donald Glover and I'll.
So they continue to fail, kind of getting stuff, and you kind of get to meet all of them, and the fact that they can't rely on B. Jordan because he's never there, and they just watch as these rival team is just like rocking it. It's like
What's
they're
their
the
name?
Ghostbusters.
What's
I
their-
don't have I didn't get a name yet. That was one of those things I was like, I'll think of that later, and I could never think of one that was just sounded good.
Well, because you told me you're working on it. And
They'd
it's
probably
like
be
Ghost
something
Smashers
like.
or- I came up with one that was alliteration, but I can't think of what it was. Spirit Smashers?
Like Spectre Chasers or something like that. Spook Chasers.
Speaking of knockoffs, at Walmart, they have a DVD for some kind of 3D animated movie called The Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
It's not The Ghostbusters, but it
Or the
also doesn't seem to be the Filmation Ghostbusters. There's no monkey. Anyways,
Weird.
sorry.
Oh, yeah, no. So, yeah, they kind of just... This is it. Like, it's again, a similar thing where it's just Chris Pratt that doesn't know what they're going to do, and it's like... There's so many people catching ghosts now, it's like, what's the point? Like, we're kind of not cut out for this. So, the first act is kind of just a long thing. I do have a sequence kind of where they go to catch Slimer again. But it's more like... Slimer just wanders off because they can't get rid of Slimer. He comes with the place, like, as they tell everybody. They don't want to use Slimer too much, but I'm like, Slimer. He needs to
I intentionally left Slimer out of my thing because shouldn't have come back for 2, and he's only in 2 because the cartoon. I don't really like him in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Especially later when it's Slimer and the real Ghostbusters.
Damn, the real... So...
Do you know who did Slimer's voice in that cartoon?
Bill Murray?
No.
That'd be funny.
No, it's,
Urkel?
No, it's,
Bill Hader?
Stop! No, it's, Fred... What's his name?
Castellaneta? No, it's Dan Castellaneta.
No.
I don't know.
He's everyone.
I know who you're talking about. I can't...
He's Fred and Scooby-Doo. He's Megatron.
Yeah. Oh, God. Now I can only think of Bill Hader.
Bill Hader was not Megatron or Fred and Scooby-Doo.
He could have been. He
Um,
could have been.
but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
He has there's over 700 credits on IMDb. He's Slimer.
Of course.
And then Extreme Ghostbusters, they can get him back. And Slimer is, what's his name from Futurama?
Bender?
No.
Oh, Fry.
Yeah, I can't think what his real name is, but...
But yeah, so... Essentially, the plot kicks off when a mysterious barge crashes into the docks of New York. And the Ghostbusters...
Is it the Titanic?
No.
Are
That
they,
would be great,
are they late?
but...
No, that's in Ghostbusters
Yeah.
too. The Titanic shows up like better late than ever.
So, yeah. Almost did. So, kicks off this barge, and these things are sighted all through New York. And they're not ghosts. So...
What are they?
We'll get there. They arrive on the scene. They're called because it's a supernatural occurrence. So they call it on the scene, and they find that one of their competitors, the car is just in half. And they're just like running. Like they're just like, what is it? And they're like, we don't know. Just go. Just run. And they essentially round the corner and encounter a... What was the name of it? It is essentially a Skyla or a Skyla or something like that. It's essentially a woman on octopus legs with wolves for hips. And they're like, what is that?
I can picture 80% of that. It's the wolves for hips that throw me.
It's weird. If you look at it, there's like wolves on the hips.
If I look at what?
The pictures of Skyla.
Oh.
It's a Greek myth.
Okay.
So they start firing the proton packs at it, and it's hurting it, but it's not busting it. And they're like, oh my god. And it slips into the ocean and runs, and they're just like, what was that? So they go back, and they're kind of researching it, and they're like, that's
Frank Welker.
Frank Welker. How did we not think of that?
I don't know.
So they find out it's an old Greek monster, and they're like, what? And slowly other things from various cultures show up. Just weird monsters, very very eclectic kind of cast of creatures kind of starts popping up, and the proton packs just aren't cutting it because they're not really fighting ghosts. I mean, anytime this one of these things shows up, another Ghostbuster rival team goes down, just because it's like, these ain't working too well, and we can't catch it in a little box. So, I have a cult also that kind of they start dealing with, who is involved, and through kind of investigation and semi-teamwork with their rivals, who, it's basically just, I want Will Ferrell making fun of Chris Pratt all the time. Just like, yeah, well, you know, just he's the cool guy. He thinks he's Venkman, but it's Ray pretending to be Venkman is how I want Will Ferrell to be. Like, he thinks he's the cool one. Patton Oswalt's just mad all the time. It's like, oh yeah? Still wearing the old gray, huh? Look at my jacket. This one fits me, you know? He's just, like, snarky and mean when he shouldn't be. And they ultimately find that all the ghosts are vanishing, too. And now it's just kind of like, well, is this it? You know, there's almost like a lax period where business is slow, but not because there's no... I mean, mostly because there's no ghosts, but it's also because, like, we can't fight these things. So they investigate this cult, and they find out that all of the ghosts in New York have kind of gathered into the subway tunnels. Mostly because I like subway tunnels, and I love the stuff in 2 with the subway tunnels.
Well, I do think, like, if you were going to make a new Ghostbusters, Hellboy's kind of tone you should go for, and Guillermo del Toro loves subway tunnels.
And I want to bring back a lot. Like, I would love to have the taxi cab ghost from 1, who's just a corpse, like, isn't even a fun color. Like, I want all... The Scarelli brothers would be down there.
The Scarelli brothers are great.
Every single one of them would be down there, and even Slimer is kind of down there now. And they're like, what's happening down here, guys? And at first, it's almost like, cheese it's the Ghostbusters, and they scatter. And they're like, well, guys. And they're like, no, there's something, like, scary. Like, the ghosts are scared of this thing. Like, they don't like what's in town. And they're like, well, what is it? And they're like, we don't know. We don't know, but we haven't been... Like, unlike the last 2 times, where, like, something rose up to power like this, and we were like, yeah, because it was on our side, this thing doesn't like us. And it's like, ugh.
In the last 2 times.
Well, they didn't really rise up in 2 with Vigo, but they kind of, like... When Gozer's doing its thing, all the ghosts are like, ooh, party time.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying.
So I would establish that. They're
it's
like...
Party Man.
Yeah, it's Party Man.
I was out there dancing too.
So they're just like, yeah, we're down here because... Forget that, you know? So the ghosts are like, alright, well, we'll help. So you kind of get this, like, the Scarelli brothers, and, like, you get this weird little trio of teams kind of investigating this cult that's now developing in New York who keeps, like, just appearing. They find out it's ancient. It's like pre-Latin, like ancient Sumeria. They worship.
Is it the first cult? Because I had the first cult, man.
I don't go like a first cult, but they worship some kind of elder being, which is named. I have it written somewhere. The Mater Monstra, which is Latin for Mother of Monsters.
Oh, cool.
And essentially find out that this creature is this incomprehensible, just like storm of shape. Essentially, it's almost like a big Shoggoth, except instead of just mouths and eyes, it becomes more recognizable things like wings and stuff like that. So and the legend says anytime a piece of it falls off, it becomes a monster, which is where you get Medusas, where you get Minotaurs, anything weird like that, like abominations. And they're like, so what is it? And it's like, well, it's transdimensional. And they're like, what are we going to do about that? Like, if we can't fight the things that are showing up, what are we going to do to literally the boss monster of it?
Cross the streams.
Cross the streams. So, well, essentially, it all kind of comes to a head as the cult starts doing its thing, kind of at several points in the city, and they're like, well, I guess we're gonna have to split up because this is so strange. Like, it causes a kind of like how in 1 there was that weird like storm that started. It kind of starts causing another one of them. So they're like, all right, we'll go check out, you know, the docks where the barge crashed. You guys go here, ghosts go here. And the ghosts, you know, scamper. And they find, like, signs of the barge, and they find out that the barge, when it came in, it was empty. There was nobody even on it, and anybody, like, pretty much the docks were just, like, wrecked. I actually think I mixed this up. This scene's supposed to come a little earlier with the barge. Essentially, it all culminates with this thing being conjured in the middle of New York, and it is just a massive Shoggoth, where every time they hit it with something, a piece of it breaks off, and now you're like, oh, that's a gremlin, or, oh, that's a leprechaun or something, you know, stuff like that.
It's just other franchises' monsters.
Well, it just becomes like monsters, you know, it's just, it births something crazy and different every time.
Oh, look, there's a Night of the Creeps. Oh, look, there's...
a Pumpkinhead. Oh, God, if there was a Pumpkinhead, we'd be screwed.
Well, in the cartoons, Sam Hain is pumpkin-headed. Because it's for Halloween.
Yeah. Pumpkinhead's not has anything to do with Halloween. So, they have a climactic showdown. I kind of have the Rival Busters kind of join up a little bit with the other guys. Zach Galifianakis is outed as like a complete phony. Bill Hader is probably oddly the only one who's like cool with the other guys. Patton Oswalt, his character probably... I don't have names. I should say that now. I didn't have any names for these people.
I should have just done that.
Yeah. Patton Oswalt's character, I want a moment where they hand him a jacket and he's just reduced to tears. Like, he's just like, thank you. But it all comes down to... Because, like, Chris Pratt's character, it's mostly that. It's kind of like Ghostbusters doesn't have a lot of arcs, and it's kind of... Yeah. They're all one-note characters. But I kind of want... At least not arc, but, like, turns for everybody. Like, Chris Pratt takes the manager position when Will Ferrell runs away. Tina Fey is probably pretty static. Aubrey Plaza is forced to action. James Franco's character, he would realize that these aren't ghosts, but they are transdimensional. And I kind of work in this concept of how Mater Monstra is still... she's an old one, technically. And they're like, well, old ones are dead gods. And they're like, is that a ghost? And he's like, no, but it is, because it exists outside of death and time. So it is a ghost, but it's not... He's like, it's transdimensional, it's complicated. He's like, so he kind of builds this thing where he's like, well, listen, if this thing is dead but not a ghost, that means death and ghosts all follow the same kind of particle pattern. And he kind of figures out that you can technically modify the streams to just match wavelengths. They switch the polarities a little bit. Not to just win, but they
don't reverse them. They alter them.
Like, this will mess with her. This will drive her back. So we get this big sequence where the team is now kind of unified. Sans Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, who have run away. I kind of have a mention of it because I think it'd be neat if like Winston and Venkman show up. I mostly want Bill Murray to show up because, oh my god, this is happening. I even kind of have like a little subplot where what's her name? Is it Diana?
Sigourney Weaver's character?
Her character.
No, it's Dana.
Dana.
There is no Dana, only Zool.
Yeah. Where her character is still in New York, they didn't work out, so he keeps in contact with her, and he's only there because she's there, and he still likes her a lot, still loves her. And I just want a moment where he walks up. I kind of had it in my head, and I was really into the idea of just like him walking up, having a moment where he's just like, oh, no, I'm not, no, I'm retired. And then, I don't know, some kind of prehistory Conan monster rushes him, and he like, up. And it's like, all right, come on. And it has to do it. I probably should have Ray in there, too. I didn't actually write that because that whole thing was kind of half-developed. But, climactic fight. And it's just kind of my pitch in a nutshell. It's a little chaotic, but... Because, I didn't feel right doing, a deep, character-driven narrative with the Ghostbusters, and I didn't really want to sit here writing scenes of jokes out.
Yeah.
It felt wrong. That's kind of my thing, is it's kind of just this turning of the wheel a little bit. I do deviate away from ghosts a lot. But it's kind of, I want them to, if they're going to take that next step towards civil servants, it needs to encompass more than just ghosts. This is the idea, the Ghostbusters now have a revitalized business by the end of this because they own the patents to transdimensional fighting. They basically just created transdimensional travel in a way. I toyed with the idea of doing one of those digital reconstruction scenes where we have Egon talk to them.
Oh.
But I was like,
no.
Yeah.
Well, that's... kind of the thing with the movies is that they're kind of fighting ghosts. That's never the big threat.
Yeah.
There's always something else. They've always dealt with other things, yeah.
So that's kind of the idea, and I like the idea of almost being look, ghosts have rights too. We're just because we're dead doesn't mean we don't have people. What about Slimer? Well, he's weird. Plus, they talk or they're weird. What's up with Vigo? Is he a ghost? I don't know.
Well, that's just a poorly written
script.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
No, he's a Carpathian.
I also I do have that in here. That the painting of them is in the
of course it is.
House.
I think Vigo would technically be a Horcrux.
Yeah,
I think his soul is in the painting.
Diary.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of it. And I kind of have I just had all these little notes of Chris Pratt being the lazy manager, because like he's a good for nothing manager. He gets in the way most of the time, and it's like
he's the guy. He's the manager of Hard Bodies in
like
in Burn After Reading.
Why do you have Michael B. Jordan scheduled for 3 days this week? I need those hours, and he's not going to show up. He's like, well, because he asked, he needed it, and then just James Franco just lives there, but he's almost a Charlie, where it's like, you can't sleep in here anymore, man. And Tina Fey spends the entire time as the heart and soul of the team. She's the Ray, if anybody's a Ray, really. But mostly I just had a lot of fun being like...
I assume at the end there's some kind of callback joke where she's like, I take it back, I don't want to save the world.
This sucks! Yeah, definitely. This sucks! I remember this was just like zapping people. And that's when you have the Venkman moment where he's like, no, it's not good. This is why or Winston, like, this is why I quit. Like, yeah. I also would love to have an 8-episode web series of Will Ferrell, Patton Oswalt, Bill Hader, and Zach Galifianakis leading into the movie as the real Ghostbusters.
As like a TV reality thing. That'd be cool.
And they all get little things, and they are the real Ghostbusters. Or that's their name. Like, they are the real Ghostbusters. As like a snarky, like, well, we're the real But yeah, that's basically my pitch.
Alright.
I like yours a lot.
Really?
Yeah, well, I like your pitches a lot. I'm always down on mine, but...
I have the exact same thing. I'm like, oh, Matt's pitches are so much better than mine.
I think it's funny that we both went with Elder Gods, Chris Pratt.
Another person taking their jobs. A lot, and we both did the sequel set now.
Yeah.
There's one, I think it was our Star Wars one. It's the only time I've seen this, because usually people like one of our pitches. Like, oh, I really like Matt's pitch, I really like Eric's pitch. There's one where it's like...
I wouldn't watch either
I wouldn't watch either of these. So I was like, well, that's cool. But...
Sorry.
Alright, so what is our prompt for next week?
Alright. You're going to love it, maybe hate it. Everybody might love it and hate it too. I want you, and me both, to do a sequel to the original Dungeons & Dragons movie.
I've thought about that.
You do not have... You can Incredible Hulk it. You just need the events to have happened, kind of.
Well, Damondeer's coming back.
Yeah. And if you don't want, that cast, you can recast.
No, Bruce Payne is coming back.
He's coming back. Yeah, so that's mine.
Alright, Dungeons & Dragons sequel, awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna be required to make it bad. Because it's a terrible movie. Like, I need to pitch a terrible sequel.
I go for it. I have an idea of how to make a lot of it make sense. Oh yeah.
Well,
I have to rewatch it though.
Well, you remember at the end they all go to a different dimension.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Because they all go to Ravenloft. I've also thought about this.
Oh yeah, me
before
too.
You. All right. Well, I get this has been Eric.
This is Matt, and the next one should be on
Yeah, we should be back on schedule because it's just us. And at some point, we will try again to have Cap. But for right now, it'll just be us on back to regular schedule every other week. Adios.
Adios.